Get the ball drawn.
Packing the mail, it's gone. She like I smell cologne. Yeah, just on the deal, I'm on. Yeah. Go I want, good. Play if you want, just do. I'm a young CEO.
Oh, this ball Adley Rushman. You're right, the catcher. You're right. I was trying to read on it.
I just check my balance, so probably pull up to your hood and come buy me and no cap. You know that y'all told you that crazy. I'm thinking she lied to your nigga. You call with you when I'm popping them both. Now they hot just like Bobby and Whitney. Stay on the go, act like I don't know.
Welcome into another edition of Trust the Process Live. Welcome back from Memorial Day weekend as well. Got James, got ET in the building. You know, guys, they say that if you can dodge a sweep, you can win the NL. They don't actually say that, but the Phillies were not able to dodge a sweep against the Dodgers, and that begs the question, ET, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that the Phillies will finish with the lead in the NL East?
If they stay as they are, stand pat, I give them a 4 out of 10, and here's why.
Damn.
Well, Atlanta's getting hot, and the problem is the Phillies are treading water. And granted, they do have injuries, but the biggest problem is the inconsistency. So you've got this, I don't know, $550 million offense with all these big-name guys all up and down your roster, and you manage 3 hits against the Dodgers. I mean, in a game that you guys needed to win to avoid a sweep, you go 0-0 into the 7th. Pivetta did everything he was supposed to. I can't blame Gabe Kapler at all because most people would have taken Pivetta out in the 7th. He was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. But what kills them is the fact that you've got all these guys in the lineup, and you manage only 3 hits. They are so inconsistent, and that's what kills them. They can't consistently hit. Outside of McCutchen, if you take him out of the lineup, their numbers are pretty bad.
Segura is hitting his strides at the right time. I'm a little bit more confident than that. I'm not all the way there, but I'm at like a 7.5, and I'm at a 7.5 because even with the inconsistency, you still find them at the top of the division right now, and the right guys are getting hot at the right time. Aaron Nola in his last 3 starts has been the Aaron Nola that we thought he was going to be coming into this season. And Bryce Harper in the last month has been one of the best hitters in the National League. Now, where you really hurt is the guys that were consistent in the beginning of the season are now dropping off in the Rhys Hoskins and the players like that, the Maikel Francos, who if he gets back to where
box missing.
But if Maikel Franco gets back to the even half of what Maikel Franco was in the first month of the season, and he's your 8th hole hitter again, then the Phillies are sitting pretty. And then you have teams that just don't go as deep in the hitting in the NL East as the Phillies do. So if the Phillies can get back on track once those injuries clear up, especially in the bullpen, then I think we'll be all right.
The other piece is that I think for all of the analytics talk and all of the Gabe Kapler omics that he uses, you don't see a lot of small ball. You don't see a lot of bunting and moving guys over. It's swing for the fences.
He's not that guy.
It's either home run or strikeout, and that's where they get killed. I get it. You know, you've got a lineup. You just want to let guys kind of free swing, but you're not playing smart baseball on certain positions and certain critical spots in the game where you need to advance a runner to put guys in position to score runs and manufacture runs, which is an old school baseball term. And that's what hurts them in games against the Dodgers where it's 0-0, you only got 3 hits. You gotta find ways to.
And there are times where he over-engineers himself. He'll try to do these little new school baseball antics, and it'll hurt. And then it'll come to times where you need to just lay a bunt down. You can't be afraid to tell Bryce Harper, "Hey, I'm sorry, you're 0 for 3 today, and we need to move around. I need you to put a bunt down."
Yep. Well, I don't know if you're really asking Bryce Harper to do that.
But that's what separates a Red Sox team from a Phillies team is the Red Sox wouldn't be afraid to tell Rafael Devers or JT Martinez, if you got to lay a bunt down right now, you got to lay a bunt down right now. If I need you to steal a base, I need you to steal a base.
On the flip side, they've also won a World Series, so I think Alex Cora has a little
proofs in the pudding, right?
Right, he's got a little bit more in there.
So you're confident. You're a 4 out of 10. You were what, 7, 7.5?
7. I'm a little bit more confident.
Then let me ask you this. We'll take a step up. Is this team good enough to, let's just say, at least make it to the World Series?
Here's what I'll say. Don't look at me like that. I need you here. They have the moldings and the piecings to do that. Just dry looking at the Phillies on paper. If you break it down personnel to personnel, bring all the injuries back, then I definitely think that the Phillies have what it takes to make up of at least a championship, like to get to the championship. Now, taking that into context and putting who the Phillies actually have, no, I don't think they'll go all the way. But if they did, let's not be surprised. Tell me why you think they won't. You got to give me a definitive reason why not.
Did anybody else beside me watch them play the best team in the NL over the weekend and watch them get?
It's June.
It doesn't matter.
It's June.
They looked bad. They looked
hurt.
Bad.
And hurt.
Come on, listen. It doesn't really necessarily make a difference because the Dodgers aren't exactly out there, playing their best baseball right now. Yeah, record-wise, they're ahead of everybody else. But in terms of them hitting their stride, you haven't seen dominant Dodger baseball in terms of them being able to really just run through teams. Those first 2 games were relatively close. This Dodgers team is on its way to 50 wins. 50.
With one of the with
50
with
wins.
a leading MVP candidate.
And Bellinger.
And Cody
So
Bellinger.
then let me ask you this then. So obviously it looked like the Dodgers were the dominant team compared to the Phillies. Will the Phillies make a move before the trade deadline? There are 2 big guys out there. We all know who they are, Keuchel, Kimbrel, to close that gap.
I think they make a move, but I don't think it's for them, and here's the reason why. How long is it going to take Kimbrel to get in baseball? Because I don't think Keuchel's the answer.
He's a closer, though.
But how long is it going to take Craig Kimbrel to get into baseball where his arm is up to speed, baseball shape as they call it? I mean, you're talking, what, six weeks after the All-Star break? So what are you paying him for the back half of the year? Dallas Keuchel is a guy who was good 3 years ago, who's lost a lot of velocity. He's throwing below 90 miles an hour in a hitter's park. He doesn't have the gas anymore. I don't think he's a good fit for the Phillies. He needs to go to a team like a San Diego where they've got that huge park where he can throw that ball, and if it gets in the air, it doesn't kill him. I don't know if he fits Philly, but I think that they need to look at maybe getting a guy, you know, a solid BC, middle of the rotation kind of guy, and then they definitely need some help on the back end.
But to your point, Dallas Keuchel in his height in 3 years ago was that A-plus guy. He's
Agreed.
now probably down to that BC guy. He'd be the 3rd member of the rotation, and he's lefty. And we need a lefty in the rotation too. But to your point, I don't know if they go out and get one of those big guys, because for them to go get them with a third of the baseball season left, their asking price has to come down significantly. Which it would, and it probably already has, but I'm not going to pay somebody $15 million for 20 games and a playoff run.
Money aside, I don't think it's a money thing because the Phillies are prepared to spend either way. They have money in their budget. They're not near the luxury cap or the side.
But they've already spent.
Fair, but the point I'm making is if they want to go out and acquire somebody, they can. I think it's more so about getting value to the baseball team. Like they just went out and they acquired Jay Bruce. Great trade because they gave up next to nothing and got the Mariners to eat a good chunk of his contract. That helps
That's
them.
a huge move. That was a huge power move.
Well, so you guys don't think, or at least ET, you don't think they should make a move. James, how confident are you in the bullpen, or how concerned, I should say, are you in that bullpen, especially if they don't make a move? They're missing 6 guys right now, and even with all those guys?
I'm concerned because of the injuries. The bullpen got a lot more flack than it probably should have during the season, because when they were bad, I get it, they were bad. But for most of the NL season, in the beginning, the bullpen was at least like 3rd best in the NL, at least ERA-wise. They weren't giving a crazy amount of earned runs. They just weren't helping and aiding the starting pitchers like they should have. But when the starting pitchers go out early, that's when the bullpen really has to extend itself, and it looks the worst. So if guys can do like the top of the rotation, Aaron Nola, Jake Arrieta, if they do what they're supposed to do, pitch deep in the bullpen, pitch deep into games, and then you get players like David Robertson and Pat Neshek back, I'm not crazy concerned. It's why I'm at a 7.5 with them keeping the lead in the NL, because when the bullpen shows up, they're good.
Okay, so Mr. Pat Neshek, who only pitches on every 4th sunny day that's above 72 degrees where there's no wind blowing.
Right.
You know, that guy, that's the guy you're going to bank on. And then Dave Robertson, who didn't look great before he got hurt. Now, people say, oh, he was injured. Okay, but it was the beginning of the season, and he was already pitching below what his expectations were. I think he's a piece, but I still think that they need another piece. I'm very concerned about the bullpen because you get a guy like a Nick Pivetta, who's very up and down, who they think has finally maybe turned the corner to turning into a big league picture. He gives you 7 scoreless.
No, but they thought
and you
that a
give
month
him
ago, and
nothing.
they ended up sending him down.
But they give you nothing out of the bullpen. Vinny Velasquez, who by the way should not pitch for the Phillies anymore this season, comes in and gives up like 17 runs in like an inning and a half. It was awful. And he had one good start out of like most of the ones that he's pitched. The rest of them have been average or bad, and it's just like, I understand they don't have enough pieces, so they got to do something, but I just don't think with where they are right now that if they don't make a move to shore up that bullpen that they're going to be a contender this year.
If this was the Phillies of last year, 2-3 years ago, my concern would be at an all-time high. But we have more run support now. In the grand scheme of things, ET's face be killing me. But in the grand scheme of things, and majority of the time, the Phillies have more run support than they have in the last 2 or 3 years. You can't tell me they don't, which is why I'm a little less concerned about the bullpen.
With the Phillies, when it rains, it pours. If they're hitting, everybody's hitting. But when they're not, they look terrible. And that's where Gabe Kapler needs to do a better job. You've got this big lineup. Hitting matters. If you got guys striking out all over the place and not being able to manufacture runs, if they're manufacturing runs, then it's all on the bullpen. But they're not even manufacturing runs in games that they can win.
Let me ask you this. Would it be time or would it make sense for Gabe Kapler to shake up the lineup a little bit? Because when they have all their guys in, it's been the same lineup from March until now.
Well, people killed him last year for mixing the lineup up too much, but I don't think that a wrinkle here or there based on
mix it up at all
matchups is something that he could tinker with maybe a game or two, just kind of see if maybe moving guys up or down
I would be
matters.
interested to see what moving Reese out of that 4 spot, maybe putting Real Muto in that 4 and putting Reese in that 5, what that would do, or maybe even putting Bryce back in the lineup a little bit
Well,
more.
and let us know. First off, share the show and comment and let us know if you were to change the lineup in any sort of way. Let us know what you would do. That is a good suggestion there. But E.T., you mentioned trying to add value and making a move to add value. Of the moves that have already been made, the guys that were brought in this summer, Bryce, Segura, McCutchen, Realmuto, who has added the most value?
So I love JT Realmuto because he's just such an upgrade over Jorge Alfaro. But I think the guy who's just absolutely stood out to most people, even casual baseball fans, has been Gene Segura. I mean, the kid has come in and done everything that you've wanted. And the big piece of it is what they gave up for him, which was J.P. Crawford, 2 bags of Skittles, and a box of Doritos, like if they boxed Doritos. Listen, it was a great trade. Listen, it was a great trade because they gave him up for nothing and have gotten huge value for him. He's a guy that if I don't re-up anybody else beside he and Realmuto, I'm okay with that because those are the 2 guys that are going to help this team in the future.
I'm going to have to go with Andrew McCutchen. That gave up a $30 million deal for 3 years, right? So it's only $10 million a year, and you get someone who's like he
Former
to me,
MVP.
he's a professional baseball player. Will go out and give you his best every single night, and as a leadoff spot, he's been a tremendous leadoff hitter for the Phillies. And also, can we remember who was playing left field last year? Reese Hoskins.
Yeah.
That is a tremendous
Butchering it.
upgrade.
You want to call that playing?
My
left field.
goodness, a
He's
tremendous
standing out
upgrade
there.
for that outfield. And now with all the stuff going on with Odubel Herrera, if they didn't have McCutchen out there in the outfield, that would be a huge gap for them. Now you can move him, and when Odubel's not playing, he goes into that center fielder role as well. They don't have to put Bryce Harper there to expend a whole lot of energy. I think McCutchen probably is the best value considering the fact that, like Segura, they didn't have to give up a whole shit ton and have to give up the whole farm for him.
So you mentioned Odubel Herrera. He was charged with domestic violence on May 28th. It's a tough situation. What do you think the Phillies should do with him?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have any argument here. It's pretty much bye-bye. I think that in an era of Me Too movement and being concerned about rights of women and how women are treated, sports literally has gotten almost to a zero tolerance. You saw it with Ray Rice. He's never played football again. You saw it with Greg
As it
Hardy.
should
Played
be.
1 year. Now he's not even in football anymore.
As it should
And
be,
I
zero
mean,
tolerance.
listen, guys at this point in their career, when you've got money, you have to be aware. You know, you got to be aware of your surroundings. Know how to walk away. Listen, Kareem Hunt was a Pro Bowl NFL leading rusher and got cut from a Super Bowl contending team. That is, if that doesn't tell you all you need to know, they are cracking down.
Same with Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill.
He's not cut yet.
Right, he's not cut yet.
He on
They're
the
trying to
verge.
figure it out.
He on the verge.
But Odubel hitting women, I don't understand it. You got so much money. Walk away, leave, go do something else. Take your money, go spend a night out at the club, do something. But it's inexcusable at this point.
And there's a whole lot of layers to this. One, the Phillies may not even have to do anything. The MLB might just come down right on
and
from
suspend
the
them.
top and just commissioners exempt list, suspend them, do whatever, and take it right out of the Phillies'
And then the
hands.
money doesn't come into the
And
contract.
two, Odubel was probably on a thread performance-wise,
Oh,
on
yeah.
the field-wise.
Oh,
There was
yeah.
probably 1 or 2 more things that he had to do to get his leash taken away from starting or possibly even being in the majors or being on the roster to begin with. So he made that decision probably a little bit easier, if not a whole lot easier, by just yanking himself out.
I think it would be a lot harder to do if he were a star. And hypothetical, not saying Bryce Harper, but if it were Bryce Harper, be a lot harder of a conversation to
Oh,
have
yeah.
than a guy who at this point is maybe 18th on a 25-man roster.
Right.
Like he's a guy that you can win or not have because he hasn't really hit good in the last calendar year. So it's not really killing them not having his production
It's
on
a
the field.
guy that when he does bad, you like chalk your hands up. You say, "God, Odubel, like what?"
Odubel being Odubel.
Right. It's-
Boneheaded plays on and off the field, truly. Hopefully they do take swift action with that. But that is all that we have for main event. Now we're going to move on to halftime. And here's a word from our sponsor, Indigo Bike Shop. All right, so that was Indigo Bike Share. I'm sure you've seen them all around Philadelphia. They've got the blue bikes. You can ride them from one place, dock them at the next. It's a great system they've got going on. Make sure you check them out. But now it's time for podium picks. Guys, you're going to give me your top 3 for any given topic that we talk about. To start it off, Andy Ruiz Jr., if you guys don't like boxing, probably the upset of like the decade. Go ahead and Google Andy Ruiz. He's a pretty big guy, and in honor of that,
Team Fat Boy.
what are your top 3 big guy moments in sports?
So I'm going to go to the one that pretty much set it all off the map, and you want to stay in the sport of boxing. James Bomb Buster Douglas, who upset the world #1 heavyweight champ, arguably one of the greatest fighters of all time, and Mike Tyson in his prime. Tyson took him for granted, got KO'd. It literally, and the kicker is James Buster Douglas got a video game and all types of endorsements, and then sunk into oblivion and was literally back to being nothing in like a year and a half. Like, it was like the shortest, rise to fame, fall to nothingness and obscurity in like ever. And it was crazy, but I remember it because I actually had the James Buster Douglas game for Sega Genesis after he
Was
beat
it
him.
lit? Was it a good game?
It wasn't better than Punch Out, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, so that's all you need to
Oh,
know.
there you go.
And just like this, Anthony Joshua probably took Ruiz for granted too, because his original fight dropped. Probably look at who they filled him in for, was like, this man's a walk in the park, and ended up seeing stars by the end of the night.
You see it happen all the time. I saw it with Chris Weidman in MMA. It happened a couple years ago, and he came in and got an upset championship win. Listen, I've never understood, and this is just me, in a competitive sport where you get your ass kicked,
Right,
how
you
you
get
go and
punched.
stand there and shake hands and smile with the guy who just beat the brakes off you in front of millions of people and embarrassed you and took your belts away. Like, I'm not shaking hands with you, buddy. Get out my face. Like, we're not friends. Like,
Right.
I don't want to go to the club and sit down and have
He
drinks
was
with
like
you
that
after this.
beforehand, too. He was like letting him hold
Like
the
he's
belts
chubby
and,
with him. I'm
they
like,
were
what are we
laughing.
doing? Like, is this a
like,
setup?
like he's a charity kid,
Right,
in
like
the
it's like
ring.
Make-A-Wish.
And then
or
people are like,
something.
oh, no, he's from Britain. He's just polite. No, FOH. I know plenty of British people who are mean as all hell.
Anthony Joshua is not polite at all.
Right, and
There
then
it is.
A third, or James, you got one?
I got one. Everyone remember my man Bartolo Colon, maybe the most famous,
Fat man scoop.
the most famous baseball player, at least of the Mono era. He hit a home run. I believe it was a couple years ago, and he was on the Mets on his birthday. He hit a home run, almost like a 400-foot shot. And when he got back to the dugout, the entire Mets team cleared the dugout, and one of those pranks because it was his first career home run. Like, and that's one of the many Bartolo Colon moments that was just hilarious. Him eating a line drive right back to his gut and then making the play to first base. Like, Bartolo Colon never ceased to make me laugh and to entertain me when he was on the baseball field. But that's one that'll just stick in my mind.
And besides throwing an 81-mile-an-hour fastball, it also took him like 21 minutes to round the bases, which was hilarious.
it's just,
And he was running hard.
He was.
Well,
when he got back.
I
When
think
did when he got back?
my favorite, just quickly, Matt O'Connell, the Patriots offensive lineman. You have to Google this.
Oh, the kick return.
He got the kick return and literally like turned on the Jets. He didn't get a touchdown, but he brought it all the way back to like
Within
the
the 5.
5-yard line.
Made a move on a
it was
DB
crazy.
too. to
I
get
always
that.
like watching O linemen with the football running hard as they can, and it looks like they're just trudging in cement.
People are scared to tackle him. No one wants to get landed on by that man. Like, almost scared to let him.
And we have a question from Social Sean. What do you have for us?
Yeah, we got a comment from Ty and Moore to start us off. Tyson was not mentally ready in the fight against Buster Douglas. Kind of a hot take. And then executive producer Zach James comes in. How is William the Fridge Perry making big man TDs a trend, not a top 3 big guy moment?
You had him on your list.
I had
list.
him on my list. I love the fact that Fridge, anytime your nickname is the Fridge,
It's a great nickname.
and you score a touchdown, that is memorable. But listen, I had to pick. I mean, most people who aren't pure football guys aren't going to remember that. Everybody remembers that Mike Tyson got knocked out by Buster Douglas. Even as a kid, I knew very little about boxing, but I knew that moment. But Fridge Perry, until I started following football, didn't even know about it.
So over now to the hardwood, talking a little bit of NBA free agency. Give me your top 3 upcoming NBA free agents that are most likely to leave their current team.
I'll start. I'm going to go 3-2-1. Number 3 for me is going to be Boogie Cousins. When the Warriors got him this year, they pretty much said mutually this is going to be a 1-year thing. We're getting him. And he's going to be here for a year. Boogie probably knew that I'm not going to really get much money from anyone else coming off an Achilles injury. So after this year, it's kind of a mutual parting of ways. I don't think anyone's going to be upset there. Number 2 is going to be Kawhi. He's number 2 on my list because I think as of recently, Toronto is maybe creeping back up into the conversation to keep him just because of the success they're having with him this year. But I think overall, Kawhi's preferred destination is to be with the Clippers. And then number 1, I gotta say KD. I don't see a reason KD stays in the Bay after all the turmoil that's happened this year, the up and down season he's having, then plus his injury. I think he's just on his way out the door.
So the one with Kawhi is interesting just because I think that had they not gotten to the finals, it would have been pretty much a lock. He was
number
gone.
one, yeah.
But he hasn't been to get to the finals literally with a team that's his team, where it was centered around him. I think that incentivizes him, and Toronto wants him. They're making
That's
it
what I'm
really
saying.
attractive.
And he doesn't have to share the little bit of spotlight he has. He have to share with anyone. He's got an entire country behind his back.
In a place where he doesn't have the same spotlight that he would if he were in a major market like in LA. Like he's not a
Seems like he
spotlight
wants
kind of
that.
guy.
It's kind of weird, right?
Maybe,
I mean, he
right.
tried to force his way there.
Yeah,
I don't
perhaps.
I don't know.
He also like just bought a property in Toronto somewhere. So I
You
don't know
don't
what
buy
that
property unless you
yeah.
plan on staying or visiting a lot.
That's what I'm saying.
My 3. So the number 1 for me is going to be Mr. Kyrie Irving. I think, listen, the guys in Boston packed his bags for him after he played so bad in the playoffs. Number 2 is going to be Mr. Kemba Walker, just because Michael Jordan knows he can't re-sign him, and there's no point in trying to keep him there. They're not getting any better. They're a middle of the road, like they're in that NBA purgatory. Let them go, try to build and get younger and start over. And the other one is a surprise, and I think it's D'Angelo Russell. And I think the reason is not because D'Angelo Russell didn't play well, but because the Brooklyn Nets want some splash power, and getting a guy like Kyrie who wants to play in the New York market. I don't think he goes to the Knicks. They're too dysfunctional. Brooklyn's a team on the rise, up and coming. It makes sense. And now D'Angelo can go somewhere else.
Yeah, well, and for the record, the Nets did say that they believe that not only could Kyrie and D'Angelo work together, they could thrive together. I don't really believe that.
They're playing the same position.
Are they playing with 2 basketballs?
Right, right, exactly. And so then on the flip side, rank the most likely to stay of those NBA free agents.
So I know for all Sixers fans who are hoping not to hear this name, I'm going to say it for you. The first one, most unlikely, is Klay Thompson. There's no reason for him to leave Golden State. They're the Splash Brothers. He and Curry will play their entire
The
careers
most
together.
content man in NBA history is Klay Thompson.
Absolutely.
He got
Loves
no
his
reason to-
role.
got no
He's
reason
going to
to
make
leave.
$25 million to sit in Golden State and play for titles his whole rest of his career. He's good.
Why would he leave?
Exactly. The second one is Chris Middleton, I think, just because there's nowhere else where he's going to go and be the second option. Nowhere in the NBA. He's going to go and be the second option and be on a team that can contend. Because the Bucks contended with him as literally the second
And he
option.
got a solidified role with the Bucks. Solidified.
Agreed.
Number 3, I'll round out your list for you, is Al Horford. I think the combination of his age and where the Celtics are with him in the roster, I think it makes a perfect match. He's not going to want a whole, like a lump sum amount of money the Celtics are going to be able to afford up. And if he goes, who's going to take him? Now, I don't think any really contending team is going to want to take him where he's going to be able to still start. If he wants to go to a contending team, he might have to take a more of a Marc Gasol role and come off the bench at first. I just don't know if Al Horford wants to do that.
I think that's going to depend heavy on what happens with AD. If they can pull the trigger on the trade to land AD, that will dictate what happens with Al Horford.
And that's more of the Celtics letting Al Horford go than Al Horford leaving.
Correct.
Yep. And then finally, rank the top 3 most dysfunctional sports franchises.
You want to go first?
So I think we agree on this one. The Knicks.
New York
The
Knicks.
Knicks are the absolute worst. It's not even close. They are a train wreck happening daily. It's like literally watching Facebook. You know, it's a train wreck. So
They need a whole turnover of
listen,
everything.
James
Everything needs
Dolan
to-
must
James
go.
Dolan's
He's terrible. He's god awful. Number 2 is one who's been bad for years, but is starting to turn a corner. Had a decent draft, and that's the Washington Redskins. Still need to see him pim it together on the field and actually win some games. But they've been dysfunctional for a long time. I think Snyder started to get the message when people were literally like boycotting and booing him a couple years ago, and he's kind of taking his hand off the team as much and being as visible. And then obviously the number 3 is Mr. Adam Gase. I'm glad you're out of Miami. The New York Football Jets. Go Jets. Yeah, go Jets.
You can have that. You can have that.
And they're gonna go down in an entire crash bonfire type style. Listen, they are awful. I think Le'Veon Bell may have just literally sealed his fate in his career. I don't think they're ever going to win anything there. Gase is not a very good football coach. I think bringing in Joe Douglas, who it seems like all things are pointing towards that, for a man who literally got a GM fired and literally wanted to overpay for guys. Well, he got a GM fired because he didn't like the fact he overpaid for guys.
Yep.
And now you're going to bring in Joe Douglas, who's a good football mind, but you don't know if you guys are going to agree on philosophy. So now what happens?
Right.
You know, who wins that battle? Seeing how the Eagles already went through something similar with Howie Roseman and Chip Kelly, I'm very surprised that the Jets are going to take the same role and letting a coach kind of come in and dictate to the GM what's going to happen. But that
weird
seems like it's going to
it's
go.
weird.
But I'm
It's
gonna
weird.
have to disagree with your Redskins one. You did say they were turning the corner, but I think they've jumped out of the realm of dysfunctional now. They took over who the Giants should have taken, and they took Dwayne Haskins. And you got to remember, in the last season before Alex Smith got hurt, they were winning the NFC East.
True.
So they're turning it around. Jay Gruden's a good coach, like you said. Snyder's got his hand in all the right moves right now for the Redskins. to be said, they are the Redskins, and that could turn on itself
In a
very
hurry.
quickly. Let me give you my three. We already agreed with the New York Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I'm going to say the New York Giants. Come on, because they traded Odell Beckham Jr. for really next to nothing. They didn't want to pay Landon Collins. And now all of a sudden, you pass on Dwayne Haskins, and who do they take? Eli Manning Jr., Eli Manning. I won't even say 2.0 because
There's a
that's
picture of,
that's an upgrade, right?
You ever seen the picture
He's
of them
like
next to each other?
1.13, like still needs more upgrade.
And it's one thing to pick Daniel Jones. It's another thing for your head coach to come out and say that Eli Manning has 3 more years left in the tank. In what world? I don't know what Eli Manning you're watching and what national.
If I'm doing that, I'm
football
taking
league
O
you're
lineman at 6.
Come
Right,
on.
right.
Come
Yeah, that's pretty
on.
goofy.
And right after you pick maybe the best talent you've seen in a whole generation in Saquon Barkley, and then you
Double down
and
with
you
a-
double down and completely undo all your good and strip all offensive talent away from him, and then the Giants are just heading down a dark path. And ET, you're not gonna like what I'm about to say, but this last one has got to be your LA Lakers. And with everything going on in that organization, you have LeBron James. Cool, but you whiffed. Cool, but you whiffed on your head coaching, and you had to settle for Frank Vogel. You got Magic Johnson saying that Rob Pelinka is over here backstabbing people. Jeannie Buss has no control over the organization, whatever. And now it's coming out that Rob Pelinka is just straight up making up stories about Kobe Bryant and Heath Ledger. Disrespecting the late great Heath Ledger. What is going on with the organization?
I thought that when they got rid of Jim Buss, they were turning the corner.
No.
And it just,
It don't look that way.
I got nothing, man. I don't know what the hell they're doing. I don't know.
Well, you were excited when you got LeBron, didn't
I was
you?
very
You were
excited. I
weren't you?
thought that they would compete, and then LeBron got the groin injury. And unfortunately, the downside is when guys that old start having injuries, they keep having injuries. You see Kobe, he had the Achilles. He was never the same guy. It's going to pretty much be the end. LeBron's going to be injury riddled the next couple of years.
Oh, I didn't mean to make you go down a real dark path like that. It's just, I don't know if it's
They're
that.
they're another strikeout in free agency away from it being a full-blown dumpster fire.
AD, we need AD.
All right,
need one
AD,
of
you
them.
hear this, man? Make
need
sure
AD.
everyone
Come
retag
on over.
AD and tell him that
Kyrie,
ET needs him.
you need somebody. You
But
need somebody.
that is all that we have. Sean, do you have a question? One last question?
Just want to
Anything?
make sure we mention the Lakers.
Oh, yeah.
So not
I got
letting
you.
guys get out of that segment without
I got
talking
you.
about the Lakers.
I got
Sean,
you.
making sure that we're checking the boxes. Appreciate
He
your
was
work.
hoping that I didn't say it too. I could see it on his face. He was hoping I didn't say it.
So now on to tap outs. James, you want to start?
I will have something to start because I have something that has been like really on my mind and really bothering me. It's happened a couple of times in the last week. I would say 5 or 6 times in my entire life. I don't know if you guys have people like this in your life or have friends like this, but when I have food in front of me, I don't care how close, listen, I don't care how close we are. I don't care how much of a friendship or relationship we have. You ask before you take food off of my plate. I'm a pretty generous
We
guy.
agree.
I'm a pretty generous guy. Jake, you can attest to this.
Absolutely.
If you ask me 90% of the time, I will give you something. But if you find yourself as eager and as ambitious and as bold as to go onto my plate before asking and take food off of it and eat it in front of me, you best be prepared to square up because I'm not happy about it. That is my top out.
All right, so I agree 1,000%. The only 3 people allowed to get that pass. 1 are your kids, 2 is your mama, 3 is your woman. Nobody else on earth.
My mom will get that pass because
There-
if I try to say something, my mom will just smack me.
Well, there it
like,
is.
my
So
mom get that
I
pass.
concur.
And when I have my kids, they better ask daddy before they
There it
take,
is.
before they take food
Hey,
off
I
his plate.
understand, man. It sounds good till your daughter comes up and says fry and just reaches for it. I mean, listen, it's happened. What do you do? Here, baby, take the fry. She takes the whole bag. It is what it is.
You're better man than me.
All right, so my tap out is on something a little different. I had a chance to watch this new Netflix released original, When They See Us, which is based on the true story of the Central Park Five. Now, I was a teeny tot at the tender age of 7 or 8 when that story actually happened. And for those of you who don't know, it's about 5 juvenile African-American youths who were charged, tried, and convicted of a crime that they didn't commit, of a assault of a woman in the park. Now, it was a gang of kids out there, and you can watch it, but what it goes to show just from watching it, and I get it, listen, there's some dramatization to it, but there was also so many facts to it that were true. The fact of how far, even as we look now in 2019, we feel as a country we've come to overcome some of the racial injustices that we see, and just have that reminder that even as far as bad as it was back there, there's still quite a few that exist in today's society that are smack dab in front of us on a daily basis. Police corruption being the #1 thing that we see as a day in, day out operation. you know, the way that they shoot and kill unarmed civilians. It's something that watching it angered me and frustrated me, but also gave me a sense of purpose to be more cognizant of things that I see, say, and do, especially in regards to law enforcement, because even as a child, you can be taken advantage of. And it's also important that people are aware of what their rights are. People need to educate themselves what can and can't happen. There were so many things wrong that I'm sitting here thinking as a parent, I never would have let my child go through and happen. But in the 80s, everybody just, you know, allegedly just did what the police said. Nowadays, in the age of social media and Facebook, nobody's going to do anything. They're going to ask their friends, hey, this cop asked me a question. Should I answer yes or no? And get a poll going, you know, that kind of thing. But I like the fact that, you know, as we as a society have become more aware, we've become more aware and making others aware. And I think that we need to continue that going forward.
And kudos to Netflix, because it's not the first or the last thing that they've aired or they've made a series that has been controversial, has been socially aware. Netflix, I pat on the back, they're doing a very good job.
So I don't really have anything. I'll just let the viewers know we're going to an every other week schedule. So we will be seeing you in 2 weeks, because that is
The summer be dry for sports.
Yeah, it's a little dry.
Outside watching the Phillies lose 8-0.
That is
Women's World Cup coming on.
Women's World Cup as well. That is all we have for this episode. However, thanks for tuning in. As
I like the outro
always,
pop, though.
at My New Philly, where something's always new and everything is always Philly, baby.
Come on, we about to win that joint. It don't sound right. The Sunset version.